The Australian passport is one of the best passports in the world, but that doesn't mean that Australian citizens don't seek an additional Plan B citizenship. Hi, my name is Sadife and I work in the strategy department here at Nomad Capitalist. Now, you might think, if I have an Australian passport which allows me to travel basically anywhere in the world, why would I need another citizenship? With the world changing so much these past few years, a lot of people that hold a Tier A passport are actually looking into diversifying their passport portfolio and obtain another citizenship for diversification and security purposes, or maybe even for a tax perspective. Since taxation in Australia is not tied to your citizenship but to your residency, when people leave Australia and become tax non-residents, they want to go to a more tax-friendly jurisdiction so they are taxed more favorably. One of the countries that people opt for is Antigua. If you are an Antiguan citizen, you live in Antigua and are deemed a tax resident there, obviously without failing the tax resident test anywhere else, you are subject to a very favorable tax regime. There are no capital gains, inheritance taxes in Antigua. There is no wealth tax as well. However, gifts may be subject to transfer tax. You can obtain the Antiguan passport by donating $130,000 to the National Development Fund. This donation will cover a family up to 4 members. Upon submission, it will take around 3 to 6 months for the passport to be issued. The passport will be valid for 5 years, which can be renewed thereafter. No physical presence is required to obtain the citizenship, but in order to renew the passport, you need to spend a total of 5 days since gaining citizenship within the 5-year period. Although, obviously keep in mind that in order to be deemed a tax resident, you have to live there. With the Antiguan passport, you can also live in St. Kitts at favorable tax rates as well. As an Australian citizen, you might want to live in Europe, and there are a few passports that will allow you to do so. Not counting the more time-consuming options, such as Portugal or Italy, probably one of the best options if you are looking to obtain a passport quickly is Malta. With a Maltese passport, you can live and work anywhere in the European Union. Although a pricey option, it is definitely worth it for some people who do not want to invest their time in order to get the citizenship. There are 3 mandatory investments in order to be eligible for this passport. Firstly, we have the direct investment. You need to make a significant non-refundable investment in the National Development and Social Fund of Malta, which is set up by the government of Malta. This is run by a board of trustees. For the main applicant, if you are applying for citizenship after holding residency for 3 years, the donation is €600,000. If you are applying for citizenship after holding the residency for 1 year, it's €750,000. You need to donate an additional €50,000 to add your spouse and children as dependents. On top of the donation, you need to either rent or purchase real estate in Malta. You must commit to retaining an immovable residency in Malta for a minimum time period of 5 years. This can be fulfilled by either buying a property in Malta for €700,000 and maintain that ownership for 5 years, at least 5 years, or by leasing a property for at least 5 years with a minimum annual rent of €16,000. The sublease is not allowed though. The last requirement is a charity donation, where you need to make a donation of at least €10,000 to a local non-profit organization. This is applicable only to the main applicant. Citizenship is possible after 1 or 3 years, depending on which route you decide to go for. Potential candidates who are not already residents in the country are strongly advised to begin the residency process as soon as possible, since Maltese citizenship has a temporary residency requirement for at least 12 months. If you do not apply for citizenship after 36 months, the residency will be cancelled. The physical presence while residency is not really specified. However, in order to qualify for citizenship, you do need to spend some time there. We generally recommend being present in Malta for at least 3 non-consecutive months in the year. There are no citizenship tests when a person applies for Malta citizenship by investment, and you are not required to know Maltese or even English to be accepted. On the other hand, if you're not looking for fast-track citizenship in Europe and you can wait, you can always opt for Portugal or Italy. With a golden visa in Portugal potentially cancelled, you can still opt for the passive income visa, given that you can prove that you can sustain yourself and your family financially while in Portugal. You initially get issued a temporary residency permit, which is valid for 2 years, and it must be renewed at the end of the second year for an additional 3 years. In order to keep your temporary residency permit, you cannot be away from Portugal for 6 consecutive months or 8 non-consecutive months during the validity of the temporary residency permit. If you hold a permanent residency, though, physical presence is either 24 consecutive months or 30 non-consecutive months in any given period of 3 years. With a permanent residency, you are entitled to live, work, and study anywhere in Europe. But you shouldn't be out of Europe more than 1 year in a row, and you should return to Portugal every 6 years. Citizenship is possible after 5 years if you prove that you have connections to Portugal, like being enrolled in social security, national health system, have an address, and some other details. At this present moment, you also need to pass an A2 level Portuguese language test, but Parliament is willing to remove this language test from the citizenship requirements, and it is likely to be withdrawn. Another option besides Portugal is Italy, which is possible after living in Italy for 10 years. As an Italian citizen, you would enjoy the right of movement and work throughout the entire European Union, the right to vote, to pass the citizenship to your children as well. An option to consider in Italy is La Dolce Visa, which requires you to invest in Italy. You have 4 options. Firstly is the innovative startup, where you need to invest 250,000 euros in an Italian innovative startup enterprise. Then you have the company investment, where you need to invest 500,000 euros in an Italian limited company. You can also opt for the philanthropic donation, where you invest $1 million and you can support public interest in the fields of culture, education, immigration, management, scientific research, preservation of cultural and natural heritage. The last option is government bonds, where you need to invest 2 million euros in Italian government bonds. This type of visa is valid for 2 years. During this time, you can use the visa to enter Italy and get a residency permit. The residency permit then is valid for 2 years additionally, starting from the date of the entry. You can apply to renew it for another 3 years by applying at least 60 days before it expires. You can do this online via the investor visa portal. You can renew the permit every 3 years if you can prove that you have maintained your investment or donation. This visa essentially can be renewed by the Investor Visa Committee after reviewing your application and determining whether or not you have maintained that donation or investment. After 5 years, you can become a permanent resident in Italy, and there aren't any Italian language test requirements. If you are considering applying for any of the citizenships that we went through, here at Nomad Capitalist, we have a dedicated team to ensure you a smooth process. Additionally, make sure to check out our website, where you can find information for our annual Nomad Capitalist live event. It will be held this year in Kuala Lumpur, and there obviously we'll give you the latest inside information from our senior strategy and research team on what's actually working in 2023, as well as giving you access to the brains behind Nomad Capitalist.